2020 Vision Quest. And we thought we would warm the winter evenings with a little insight on people, places, and thoughts that we think are worth sharing. And you know, when I stepped outside at minus 15-degree wind chill today, I thought this was a really good night to start that concept. I also think we picked the right person to start that because Michelle is one of the warmest people I know. She's also one of the most talented and hard-driven, enthusiastic people I know to causes that are really important to me, to a lot of people. That's what has caused our paths to cross in many ways along this, including her choice to be our most recent board member to 2020 Vision Quest. But her kind of resume speaks to itself, and I want to take a second to kind of read that out, and I don't want to miss anything, so I'm going to flick through it a little bit. But Michelle is an accomplished marketing and development executive with an emphasis on a wide range of nonprofits, She's known for leading large-scale growth efforts and transformative partnerships. She turns strategic concepts into business realities. Michelle is the founder of BluePath, which is an organization providing service dogs to children with autism. She's passionate about empowering people. She volunteers as an EMT and takes a special emphasis on educating the role of people with special needs and service dogs in that industry. She enjoys travel, something that we're going to talk about because we've traveled a lot of places. Hiking, again, you can see where our paths are crossing. Horseback riding, not a place we've crossed paths a little bit. CrossFit, yoga, and she also has a BS in business economics, which puts her in line with Bill Belichick, a New England Patriot, not the New York Giants, as she might like to say when she introduced me to Eli Manning, a story that may come up in this journey. All that said, I want to put that aside and just sit down and be able to relax with Michelle a little bit. So Michelle, why don't you step in and join us if you're willing?
Hello. That was a very grand introduction, Randy. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry trying to read it in a different way than I was ready for. So first off, welcome. Thank you for joining. And you know, before I get to my questions, I'm kind of curious what your reaction was when I reached out to you and said, all right, I have this idea. I want to introduce people and thoughts and organizations that I care about that I think matter to people. And I said, I want you to be the first person, and I don't even really know how I'm going to do it yet. Were you annoyed and it was an obligation? Were you fearful, oh God, I got to go on camera, he's going to make me stand in front of people again? Or what was your reaction?
Oof. Much like many other questions you've asked me over the years, I don't know that there's ever all significant thought that goes into the things, whether it's, do you want to go to Africa and climb a really big mountain with us? Or do you want to get involved in any activity? I kind of just always say yes, which could be a problem, I guess, for
right. My
friend down the road.
My friend Tom Cassidy says to me, that's a terrible idea. When do we start? And that sounds like what you're saying. So, you know, right off the bat, I know that you come in with a kind of fun video to do the introductions before I get to the question. And I wonder if you could set the stage for the video before you ask Robbie to play it for us.
Yes, absolutely. So I run a small nonprofit called BluePath Service Dogs, and we give service dogs to children with autism. This is the 1-minute trailer of a 10-minute video. We didn't want to make you guys sit through the long version, but you can always follow up on that later. So it's called Hope in a Blue Vest. It follows some of our volunteers and our clients, and it was actually produced by a Tony Award-winning Broadway guy named Ken Marsally, who's fantastic. So I'll let Robbie play that.
If I could stop one heart from breaking, I shall not live in vain. If I could help one life ease the aching, or cool one pain, or help one lonely person into happiness again, I shall not live in vain.
BluePath is hope.
BluePath to me is a future.
BluePath is love.
BluePath is opportunity.
BluePath is changing the world one dog at a time.
Nice. I obviously I don't get to see all of that, but I certainly get to hear that. I love the one one dog at a time notion, and I love the Michelle Brier notions, right? The way you approach the world. I've been a big fan of you for a long time. I think you represent a lot of ideals that are important to me. But I'm curious about what's the passionate impetus behind this, and can you tell us a little bit about how that got started and how the journey's gone so far, the journey on the Blue Path?
Yes, so I'm lucky to have two wonderful partners who worked with me to found BluePath in 2016. We all bring a different set of skills to the table, which makes us a well-rounded group. And essentially, for anyone who has any connection to autism, and I'm sure a large number of you on this call know someone or have a family member or have friends who have autism in their lives, the number of autism diagnoses are pretty staggering these days. It's the CDC number is 1 in 54. About half of children who are diagnosed with autism are prone to wandering or elopement behaviors, which are extremely dangerous and can be very, very limiting to families in terms of having to devise a divide and conquer strategy for family outings, trying to leave the kid with autism at home so he or she could be safe, and often making any trip into a public setting very, very frightening. So our dogs are service dogs because of their ability to provide safety. They act as an anchor for a child who may wander or bolt into a dangerous situation, and they really allow families to rejoin a community. In addition to the safety part that they offer, our dogs help to facilitate connections with other people, and they often serve as a really good friend to a child who may struggle with language in a relationship where words are unimportant and unnecessary. What other things should I talk about? Our dogs, probably one of the big things for being a small nonprofit of our size is that our dogs are provided free of charge. So financial capacity is not a limiting factor to be able to receive a life-changing service dog for your child. Did that answer your question a little bit?
Sure does. And that last part just puts a little bit of the weight onto your shoulders, right? As development, as fundraising for BluePath, that's a lot of work to make that happen. And the way we first became connected was my interest in trying to help raise funds for guide dogs, and our affiliation began with guide dogs, but it's carried on well beyond that. And I know that you have experience with both guide dogs and now the dogs that serve children with autism. So I'm curious if you can kind of contrast, the differences as well as the similarities between these types of service dogs.
Yes, of course. So I'm seeing a couple of puppy raisers have joined us. I see Michelle Russell as one. So hi, Michelle. I haven't seen you in a while. And so in terms of the start of an autism service dog's life, it's very, very similar to a guide dog. They grow up with puppy raisers who are incredible volunteers and teach them house manners and basic obedience and socialize them to everything the world has to offer. Initially, when the dogs come in for formal training with a professional instructor, the process is really similar. The instructor's building the bond with the dog. They're reviewing and solidifying those basic obedience skills. Our dogs learn that anchor, which is the most important skill that they have. And I'd say one of the biggest differences from a training perspective is we spend a ton of time in schools, both in classrooms with typical kids and classrooms with special needs kids, to really give our dogs just such mass exposure to everything a child might do. We teach them to avoid the cheese doodles on the ground and to be able to play on the playgrounds. We want our kids when they're on the playground with their service dog to become the really cool kid with the cool dog, because they have the dog that knows how to go down the slide and go through the tunnels and like trots over the wobbly bridges. So some of that stuff is unique to the autism service dog. I'd say a couple of other big differences, and Randy, you know this one so well. A guide dog really has a massive bond with his or her primary handler. A service dog in an autism family will bond with everyone. A parent or a caregiver is the primary handler of the dog. Most of our kids won't be able to have the responsibility to fully care for their dog. And when the dog is at home and not working, all of our families tell us that they go to whoever needs them most in that moment. They're able to provide excellent therapy to a whole family. And sort of in a similar light, when out and about, whereas it's, you know, such a terrible thing when someone disturbs a working guide dog, we actually sometimes welcome that opportunity to have a social connection with a child with an autism service dog. So depending on what the family's doing, they may not be able to take advantage of every single time that happens. But often for a child with some language, it's a great opportunity to practice saying the name of their dog, how old their dog is, what type of dog it is, and just really have that experience of socializing with someone new.
You know, I get that. Just as what I like to term it is the icebreaker is nobody asks to pet my cane when I'm out in public with my cane, but when I'm out there with my guide dog in non-COVID times, the first contact usually starts because of my guide dog. And that sounds silly, but sometimes when people are approaching someone with a difference, you need that icebreaker to make it comfortable to interact. And, you know, while it's a growth opportunity in that situation for a child with autism, it's a growth opportunity in my world for, you know, social connection as well.
Yeah, for sure. Everyone, I mean, I don't know. If you don't love dogs, there's something just deeply wrong with you.
You know, I hear the you know, the story of your dogs get to, you know, go down the slide and across the things and things that guide dogs don't do. And I'm thinking, maybe most guide dogs don't get to do. Mine have certainly taken me some unusual places. And you know, that's kind of the fun part of my third of 5 questions I wanted to reach out is, you know, maybe a little fun of some of the zany moments, or maybe the, you know, the touching moments that we have with our dogs. I wonder, superlatives aside, maybe there's a tale or two you'd be interested in sharing with us of your dogs, our dogs, right? Whatever inspires.
Yeah, for sure. So I have obviously the best dog in the world. And I feel strongly that every dog owner should say that. So I stand by it. I have my pet dog is an 11-year-old German Shepherd named Dina. I raised her to be a guide dog, but we always say kind of in this world that all of the dogs choose their careers, and Dina chose to be mine. There's kind of like not one resounding special moment, so I'll share a few. My lifestyle has allowed Dina to be part of so many activities. We've hiked all over the country together, including New Hampshire quite a few times. Dina regularly comes to the barn with me and loves show jumping, all the jumps in the riding ring. She's very, very good. We practice yoga together. She comes to CrossFit. She knows how to do burpees over the rower. She's helped to raise so many guide dogs and autism service dogs. I remember having a new dog in the house one time who I wasn't paying enough attention to, and I had walked into the kitchen and was doing something, and Dina came trotting into the kitchen so alarmed that it made me go investigate what Winston was up to, and he was totally getting into trouble in my office. So she had a bit of an alert system to help bring in some of the new ones.
She's a snitch is what you're telling us.
Basically, yes. But it was so appreciated because he was completely eating a pillow. And, you know, it's having worked in PR for a lot of my career, Dina has met so many, you know, celebrity humans, celebrity dogs. But I think one of our most special moments was the first hike that you and I did together when we did Liberty and Flume. And I got to watch you work with, in my opinion, the greatest guide dog of all time. And I have a photo that I treasure of Dina and Quinn together at the top of Mount Flume that is actually in my office and I look at it pretty often. So Dina, without ever becoming a service dog or a guide dog, she's been of the greatest service to me in my life.
That's really good. I could spend the whole night doing those types of chats, but I'm gonna change directions and I'm gonna come down off a high point, off a 19,341 foot high point. You and I were on the summit of Kilimanjaro together. One of my favorite photos is of you and I up there. But what a lot of people don't know is how much I struggled coming down off that. I hadn't slept in 2 days, hadn't been able to eat very well. And I have a lot of challenges that can build up. And I got really rough. And your volunteer work as an EMT certainly stands out for lots of reasons, but your medical skills came into bear there on that hike a little bit. And I wondered if you might talk maybe a little bit about that, about your choice to be an EMT, and especially some of the challenges you're facing in these COVID times, right, in a suburb of New York City, and facing really kind of the heart of it when it hit the US. So I kind of leave that a wide swath for you to choose from in there.
Well, firstly, I'm not alone in my EMT world on this call. I have 3 friends who have logged in since we started, who are also EMTs and have been on the front lines of all of this the last 10 months as well. So just have to give a shout out to them because they're incredible. So I've been volunteering as an EMT for about 11 years. I think I've been an EMT for 8 or 9 of those. My mother was a nurse and an EMT, and being able to be part of the ambulance corps has been an incredible connection with her. So starting with Killy, so as you mentioned, on the way down, we were all exhausted. I think we'd all slept the night before for about 5 minutes. We, summited, we had this like moment of extreme glory, and then we still had a really long way to get down to go to bed. And Randy, as you sort of shared a little bit, you started to be very ill, have syncopal episodes, passing out. And it's kind of hard to get out of that situation on a mountain that we were on. So I think one of the challenges is we couldn't figure out what was going on. We had 0 diagnostic tools. We were kind of trying everything in our bag of tricks of giving you food, trying to hydrate you. We tried oxygen. The one thing that had a little bit of an impact was a really sugary drink that Jen Ullman had. So it's possible that some of the issues were related to low blood sugar in that moment, but I think it was a team effort in getting you down that day and getting you to safety. And we needed something to make you not look like as much of a superhero, because you basically kicked all of our asses going up the mountain. Excuse my language there.
No FCC here, we're okay.
And then, in terms of doing EMS during COVID, it's been a new challenge. I think, it was scary, of course, very, very scary in the beginning. We had no idea what we were dealing with, and in a lot of ways, we still don't. I think, there were some funny times, and that I think you have to learn to laugh at certain things when you're scared. But in the very beginning, we were still figuring out how to use PPE, what worked and what didn't. Normally you get fit tested for things like N95s, but there was a shortage. So we were using the N95s that we had and not necessarily the ones that were perfect sized. So when you have one that doesn't fit perfectly, and then you put on any sort of eye protection and you breathe, and maybe you breathe like, hurriedly in the fashion of, carrying someone down the stairs, your eyewear fogs up, and suddenly you're in a strange person's house in a tough situation, and you can't see a blessed thing, and you're afraid to go anywhere near your face to make any adjustments because you don't want to get sick. So,
well, let me pause there. You can't see a thing. What's the problem? I'm not sure I understand.
I should have thought of that in mentioning that topic. So as we got smarter about how to navigate some of that, we got, for me at least, I should speak just for myself, it got a little easier, and it started to feel much safer going into those calls. I have, I think, 2 more EMS friends who have logged on. I feel like they're sharing the word amongst themselves, and so all hearing this particular part, we all learned from each other. And I think doing it with really good friends and partners on the ambulance made it easier. I will say, my little town so I volunteer in Katona, Bedford Hills, and it was pretty incredible to see my little town come together in this. We started doing birthday parades where we would drive around to the set list of addresses, and with, the fire department and the police department, and have our lights and sirens going with the idea of bringing some joy to people on their birthdays. Except what would happen is all these people would come running out of their houses, saluting us and holding up signs thanking us. And I will say, in 11 years of doing this, I've never been prouder to be a volunteer EMT in my community. And I will also share that I have my 2nd dose of the COVID vaccine tomorrow, which I am very excited about and very, very grateful for. Sorry, that was a really long babble.
No, that's good. I'm excited for you to have it too. And in your answers all through, and we're running with a little longer than our 15, but I want to hear your answers, and then we'll open it up. I got one more question, but I want to just share. I hear so much gratitude in everything you do, and that's part of you. And I think gratitude is so important. It lifts our spirits around, and the expression of appreciation to others is a great way to lift them up. And I hear people coming together, and honestly, we won't go too far into this tonight, but these are really easily divisive times, and that can be a dark thing. But when people learn to come together, that can be such an uplifting and powerful thing. I know you and I both believe that, but I also think that's the key to some of the ways we're able to be successful. And that kind of segues to my final question is, right, I really do believe that you're a beautiful person, and that's an example of how you express it. But, I took 104,000 words to write a book that my wife had to force me to get short enough to get it down that much. But part of that was to understand all the influences in my life that led to the skill sets that I have and the approaches I have. So my not insignificant challenge to you is, in much shorter order, what are the influences that led you to be this incredible person that you are, that does so much for so many?
Well, many of them are on this call. So I have the greatest family and friends on the planet. All of them are overachievers in everything that they do and look to give back in every possible way. So they've been the biggest role models. And also, I think it's much easier to take big risks when you know that you have great people to support you if you fall on your face. So I think that's huge. Randy, you have always been a really positive influence for me. I tend to jump headfirst into things at times, and your guidance has always reminded me to be really thoughtful in my approach and to use every tool that's available in my toolbox. So while I do say yes to a lot of things, I think our friendship has made me say yes in a more pragmatic way that serves me well. And I think I'm like really lucky that I'm super fulfilled by what I get to do. I love doing the work that I do, and it makes me feel good to do it. So it makes it easier.
There's a lot of people who take the approach that if I'm successful, it will make me happy. And I think if we're happy, it will make us successful. When you do things that make you happy, it's likely to make you successful. The trick is, right, obviously doing that with a little bit of a plan, right? That's kind of my influence, I guess you suggest, but I get it from other people, right? Measure 9 times, cut once. We don't plan to fail. We fail to plan. Those are the pieces I take with me. So all that said, I've thrown some questions at you. I know we want to open it up to the floor, but I promise you I'd give you a chance to take a couple of retaliatory rounds at me. Is there anything you want to throw back at me?
Well, I feel like I need to, have some silly ones, but I have still more lofty ones. Maybe the audience can help with some of the funnier side. But you were just talking about planning. And you're probably the person I know that sets the loftiest goals for yourself. So I was curious what some of your plans and goals are for 2021 in the midst of everything going on in the world.
Yeah, sometimes in 2020, it's get over the 2020 hangover, and sometimes get out of bed in the morning, right? That's my lofty goal. But I'm kidding, but I'm not. I mean, this has been a hard year, right? For me, for a lot of people, and I want to do some healing for me and a lot of people. And I'm a big believer that accountability for healing begins with us. I want to come out of COVID not being defined by the challenges that it wrought, not just the virus, but also some of the frustrations people have had in how they approach each other. Masker, anti-masker, never mind all of the political turmoil. But how do we get back to just having healthy interactions? And I want to find ways to do that, because if we don't, I don't know what the end game is. Right. So trying to find the way to bridge that, and starting with the accountability. What can each of us do in that part? So little steps, right? Bring people together and show them, focus on some of the things where we are united, right? I think of it kind of like my disability, and the fact that, right, we all have more in common than different. And when we start with that foundation to build our trust and to build our communications, then we can delve into the things where we're different, to start looking at it respectfully, to where we can move forward. So that's a lofty goal that I'm not even going to be able to touch on the grand scale, but I don't have to touch it on the grand scale. I have to touch it in the world around me, the people who are in my life, because that's where it's going to have the biggest effect on me and the people I care about the most. So start there. And in the more direct sense, my organization has to come out of this able to reach students. We presented schools, as you well know, and COVID gave us this beautiful opportunity. Things going virtual, I can now present to a school in Texas and in Oklahoma and California and Montana, and those would have been out of my geographical reach, and not anymore. So those are part of the package that we can add. And I want to look for all of those opportunities. And right now, I just really, really look forward to hugging my friends in 2021 and getting out on a hike with my friends. And, probably my biggest goal is, no surprise, I want to have a 4-legged guide dog leading the way for me again. So there's a whole bunch of them, and we could go into a lot more, but that's a good start, I think.
Well, I think when it comes to bringing people together, you do that better than anyone I know. And that's why it's been such an honor, and it was such an easy yes in joining the 2020 Vision Quest board. So one more quick question for you, and then I know you want to keep moving forward, but you had asked me to share a special dog moment. And so I wanted to turn that question back on you, whether it's with Nama or any of the very special dogs in your life.
I'm going to share one, and I'm going to share it from 2 different perspectives, because it's that power of how people can have different perspectives, and it's okay. And there isn't always one answer. And it's really powerful because it's your dog and my dog. So Quinn was really sick with his cancer, and he could barely open his mouth. And this moment. And that we both have looked at it unsure of, we each have different possible approaches to it. But it's a fun moment. It's a beautiful moment in either way. But it'll be fun to share with others, I think. So Quinn could barely open his mouth, but that boy loved to play, and he was competitive to the last. And out in the backyard, in one of his final months, he and Dina are playing, and they get to playing with this giant stick branch that had fallen in the backyard. And Dina's running around with it because Quinn, first off, can barely get his mouth around it to start with. But as she's running around with it, he decides he wants to go play tug of war, and he gets up beside her, and they begin tugging with it while running. And then he's got it. And that's what happens. And he's prancing around all proud that he's got this branch. Now, the question is, the one way the story could be is Quinn is so competitive that even in his cancer and the pain and the struggle, he's too competitive to ever give up. And he somehow managed to wrestle it away from Dina. And maybe that happened. Another is Dina's very empathic, because she is. And she sees this dog that she's built a relationship with, and he's struggling and trying. And she maybe plays a little, but maybe lets him ease it out and get the victory. And I don't care what the true story is, because it's beautiful both ways. And that's just a moment that's not only beautiful between the two dogs, but it's kind of beautiful for the people who got to witness it. And that's what happens with these partners of ours.
I love that moment. I was just looking quickly to see if I could find that photo. I have a picture of the moment that Quinn got the stick to himself and he's holding it up in the air proudly. And it's one of my favorite photos of him. Yes, I love that moment.
And this is a moment after one of BluePath founders, Dr. Jody Sandler. I had seen him several months before, seen him through Tracy's eyes, mind you, laying on the floor, feeding Quinn soft dog food by hand because he couldn't open his mouth enough to eat kibble. And you think about that. Now, some medication had helped him be able to open it a little bit more, but that says a lot about how the struggle was, says a lot about your co-founder as a veterinarian with that much care to lay on a floor with a dog to individually hand feed it soft food. It's pretty amazing.
I agree.
How about Robbie and Tracy take over and open the floor to either if you want to text a question in the chat panel, or if you want to raise your hand and maybe they can see that and unmute you, or maybe you can unmute yourself, but we'll take on any and all questions.
All right, Randy, I'm looking through the group and I'm looking for, you could either use your reaction for a hand raise because I can see those, or if you want to do your video and physically hand raise, that would be awesome. Having this teacher moment, that's what I do.
And Tracy's also watching the chat panel, and we don't have such a rush. If there's nobody, you're also.
I think they're pretty
Beth
relaxed at the moment. I'm not, oh, Beth, cool.
So, hi there. I have
Beth.
a question for Michelle, which is, how did you get into the guide dog world or the service dog world? Do you have a personal connection?
So it was a little bit random. I moved to New Zealand kind of on a whim when I was 23 and was looking for a job to do when I decided to stay there for a significant amount of time. I applied for a job that I was entirely unqualified for as a fundraising manager for the New Zealand Foundation of the Blind. I had never met a person with vision loss, and I had almost no experience with raising money. And I was an American too in New Zealand, and for some reason they hired me. And I started, they are an umbrella service providers. They do everything orientation and mobility, assistive technology, and they had guide dogs. And so I saw guide dogs working for the first time. And I had a background in riding horses. And I always thought that the horse and rider relationship was the most, incredible bond you could share with an animal. And then I saw a guide dog working with his handler. And I realized, wow, this was so much more. And also so much more important because these dogs were enabling someone to live an independent life. So I worked at the Foundation of the Blind in New Zealand for a little over a year. I made the decision to come back from New Zealand after I met my nephew Rowan when he was 6 months old, and I didn't want to miss more of his life. And I decided I needed to work for another guide dog organization and got lucky and got that job I applied for as well.
Thanks. That's a great story.
Thank you.
David, you had something?
Yes. First, Michelle, just thank you for sharing your story. And thank you for all you do. It's I think what you're doing is wonderful. I'm curious with your dogs. How do you get these dogs? Do you have to buy them? Are they donated? And do you mostly use labs? I'm just curious about that.
So yes to all of everything you said. As a new organization, we haven't started breeding our own dogs yet. We will. The dogs that we need to use have to essentially have the best possible health and temperament to be suitable for the job. We, having been in the guide and service dog industry for a long time in the United States, we had a lot of good connections when we got started. So many of our dogs have been donated from guide dog schools around the country. Two very special dogs who will actually be starting our breeding colony came from Guide Dogs for the Blind, which is one of the wonderful organizations that 2020 Vision Quest supports. We have purchased a couple of dogs from private breeders who really are responsible breeders and do a lot of genetic testing that we look for. And those dogs are doing well within our program. We use Labrador retrievers, golden retrievers, and lab golden crosses. And yeah, so we should actually be having our first breeding within the next few weeks. We're waiting for Binny, the golden retriever, to go into heat. This poor dog is just like, everyone's staring at her and ready and excited because we want our golden retriever puppies. And she's a little late, so she's getting like really embarrassing evaluations every single day to see if she's ready. But we should have our very first BluePath litter, hopefully within the next few months.
That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else? Questions, comments, stories?
So while they're looking for other questions, comments, I'll take a quick moment to thank the fact that we have a sponsor for our very first Fireside Chat. And that is part of an initiative we're going to be starting with our Director of Development, which is Adam Elbert, as starting a 2021 campaign. And we found a first partner, and not surprisingly, it was the Hudson Lions Club who came in with a significant donation to start us. And you'll be seeing that in the near future, the details of all of that. But as a result, they became our first sponsor, and we'll be looking for a sponsor for our second one as we seek out the right person to follow Michelle. Those will be big shoes to follow. But that said, do we have a final question maybe to wrap us up with tonight?
I'm looking.
I do want to read a message from Leslie.
I'm not hearing you on the thing.
Oh, hang on a second.
Tracy's going to read a question to us.
It was more of a comment, and it was made to everybody, but some people might not have seen it. Leslie did need to step out to another engagement, but she did want to say that Michelle is one of the most amazing people I have ever met, and I'm so sorry I need to leave the meeting. Wishing BluePath continued success. Wonderful organization. And even though she's not here, I wholeheartedly agree.
Well, I agree with that. Michelle, do you have a final word you'd like to offer as we say farewell to folks?
Well, I'm laughing because half of my ambulance corps has joined. So our Captain Allie, who's one of my best friends, clearly shared our Zoom link. So I appreciate everyone being here. But this was so much fun to participate in. I so appreciate everyone joining. I love being a part of 2020 Vision Quest, and I really look forward to the next Fireside Chat and hearing from someone new. Thank you for having me.
Does that mean you'll join us to heckle and throw in your own questions from the side gallery?
Absolutely.
So one shout out and thanks to all your EMT crew as well, because I really appreciate the work they do for so many. Honestly, I can't have enough gratitude for people putting themselves on the line to help each other's safety. So really appreciate you and your crew.
Thank you so much.
Good night, everybody.